What I'm going to do is go through what we found in our study. Both we did, we have two aspects of the study. We did an online survey that many of you took, if not most of you. We also had interviews, and I see some familiar faces that we talked to during the interviews. From that, we made recommendations on what we think you can do, what our estimate is, and that's always a challenge because it's an estimate. It's not exact science. But based on what we do, we do a pretty good job. We can pretty much guess fairly well, and it's a guesstimate. So I'm going to walk through this. One of the things, we've had some good success with it. We spend a lot of time doing due diligence up front. We've had a 100% success rate. We have never had a Catholic Church fail to achieve its goals. So we're pleased with that, but we don't take that for granted. So I'll walk through. If you want to write some questions down or interrupt me, I'm from a family of lots of kids, so I'm used to being interrupted. So I'll walk you through it. And, I was thinking about talking about politics tonight, but
I interrupt you.
I'll try and get through so you can hurry home and see the debate. But anyway, let me walk you through. So we had on the online survey we had 86 responses, which is pretty good. We also had 46 personal interviews. Let me walk you through. First of all, we did some demographics. 61% of the people we interviewed are age 60 and older. About 36 were in the 40 to 60 range, and only about 2% were in the 26 to 39 range, and then 1% 18 to 25. Gender, 47% male, 53% female. Now this is really good, actually. This was nice and balanced in this parish. Many parishes, it's like 60, 65% female and only 30, 35% male. So yours is fairly well balanced. Marital status, the vast majority of people are married. 87% of the people that we talked to or participated in the survey were married. Single, about 5%. Widowed or widower, 5%, and about 3% divorced. Years of attendance, 34% were 11 to 25 years, and 42% were more than 25. So a fairly mature church. What you're talking about here is 76% were here at least 10 years or more, 11 years or more, and many were here for a long time. 12% were 6 to 10 years, and so on. Attendance frequency, how frequently do you attend Mass? 76% said weekly, and another 14% said 2 to 3 times a month. So that's very strong. You've got 90% of the people who responded, either in the survey or the interviews or both, attend at least 2 to 3 times a month. So very good attendance pattern. And that shows the health and maturity of the church. We asked, how frequently do you volunteer at church? The highest rated one was 36%. They volunteer at least weekly. 28% was next. They volunteer rarely. And 25% 2 to 3 times per week. So you've got basically 61% of your people who are volunteering at least weekly. About 11% never volunteer. Now, we asked some questions here about why you stay. Primary reason I stay at St. Paul's, and there are actually three. There are lots of reasons, but the three biggest reasons were the liturgical experience, the spirit of community that exists here, and the spiritual, emotional environment. Spirit of community that exists here, we heard frequently and heard it in a lot of different ways, but we also heard it in our interviews. We love the community, we like the people, it's a friendly place, so that's very, very strong. Level of giving. We asked people their level of giving, and sometimes, I don't know how this measures up with your exact books, but about 18% told us they're giving 10% or more. About 28% are giving 6 to 10%, About 36% are 1 to 5%, and about 18% are less than 1%. Now, sometimes people fudge on this one a little bit, thinking, well, that's what I should be doing anyway. So if there's anything that's a little bit loose, it's usually that question. But I'll give you some idea of what people are giving. Household income, and we like to get some relationship between the two. The largest here was 60%. Mentioned our income was between $50,000 and $74,999. Now this includes most of the people. There are a few people who said none of your blank business and wrote it in, but I think that's the largest percent of your church, followed by 17% are in the 75,000 to 99,000. About 15% were in the 25 to 49.99. About 6% were 24,000 or less, and about 2% were 100,000 to 199. So you get some idea of the parish and the diversity of income. So then we ask some yes/no questions. St. Paul, and this is important because we want to get some sense of how frequently and strongly people feel challenged. St. Paul, the Apostle, challenges me to give my time, talents, and treasures and support the Lord's mission. 72% said yes outright. Another 13% said, I have to think about that. Let me think about that. Only 15% said no. So that's fairly strong. I've been involved in faith formation programs. About half of the people have been involved, half have not. I've invited guests to attend. This is pretty strong, actually. 56% said they had invited guests to attend St. Paul's. As a result of being here, and we want to get a sense of, okay, what are people saying about the effect of the church on their own spiritual lives? And 89% outright said, yes, as a result of being here, I've grown, I've been affected spiritually. That's very strong. As a result of being St. Paul's, my children have grown. Now, what happens here is this NA are people saying, this doesn't apply to me anymore, so I really don't feel good about doing this. And so we recalculated. 43% said yes, 10% said no. If you recalculate, about 82% of the people are saying yes, my children have been affected spiritually in a positive way. I'm satisfied with my religious experience at St. Paul's. Can you see this?
Yep.
About 77% said yes, 4% weren't sure, and about 19% said no, they weren't satisfied with their religious experience at St. Paul's. Then we asked some more specific questions relative to the campaign. If we move forward with a plan to increase seating capacity by adding on to our existing facility at the proposed cost of $1.5 to $2 million, I'd be willing to make a financial gift in support of it. One of the things that's really important for us to consider is we're looking at two things. We're looking at the number of no's, okay, is there a substantial level of resistance? But then we're looking at combined the yeses outright and then the maybes, which is effectively saying, yeah, I'll consider it, but I need more information. And that's what typically people tell us, well, yeah, I consider it, but I'd like to hear more about what's going on, why we need this expansion. So 84%, either the yes or maybes, are saying either yes outright or I'll consider it, but I need more information. If we move forward, and this was the $4 million, you can see it drops down here. Yes, the number of no's increases substantially here, 29% and 24%. So there's a big difference here, 71%, 84%. So what do you start to infer from that as far as the parish is concerned? Can you start to make any inferences? If you're going to do a project, which one's going to be more popular? Yeah, the expansion as opposed to adding on as opposed to building a new facility. And we heard that in the interviews fairly consistently. Of the two options, which one do I prefer? 75% of the people that we interviewed said we could do this. 25% said that, yes, that's what I prefer, but several of the people who said, yes, that's what I prefer, also said to us, but I don't think we can do that. This clearly was the one that most people are saying, that's what we need to do. Then we asked some yes/nos at the interviews. You get a sense of, these were the people we interviewed as opposed to from the survey. 57% said yes, I've been involved in faith formation. 41% said no. That's still strong. I've invited guests here, 59%, even more people that we interviewed had invited guests. As a result of being at St. Paul, I've grown spiritually. 89% said yes outright, which is very strong. And then I'm satisfied with my religious experience. About 78% said yes, about 9% were uncertain, only 13% said no. So you got better numbers, I think, with people, or stronger numbers with the people that we interviewed, but still on the surveys, the numbers are still pretty strong. Do we use financial resources well? 73% said yes, 7% said no, 20% said, well, you know, I'm not certain. I probably need more information, or I don't know anything about how we use our financial resources. Is the pastor an effective leader? 82% said yes outright, 11% said no, 7% said they were uncertain. In the interviews anyway, what people who said, well, you know, I'm not really sure, they were basically saying, I don't know the pastor well enough. I want to give it some more time. Do you enjoy the music? This is the one that we really heard about. What's that?
And nothing ever changed, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, 41% said yes, 48% said no, 11% were uncertain. But the ones who said, do you enjoy the music? Yes. The ones who said no were real vocal about the no's and lots of reasons why. Does the parish communicate well? 57% said yes, 24% said no, and about 19% were uncertain. So if there's an area that I would zero in on, and I've already said this to Father, if there's an area I would zero in on and look at more, it would be the music and the communication, increasing the frequency of communication. Okay. Is religious education formation for children effective? 49% said yes, 13% said no, 38% basically said, I don't know because effectively my kids aren't involved now. Okay? Are adult education formation opportunities effective? 72% said yes outright, only 11% said no, 17% were uncertain. Have you participated in adult formation? About half said yes, and a few folks were confused, they weren't really sure of that. But about half and half, which is pretty good. If we move forward with a campaign by adding to our existing facility, I'd be willing to make a financial gift. 78% said yes outright, and then 13% additional. So this is a little bit higher than the other one. This is 91% combining both. I'll consider it if I get more information. That's essentially what that means. Is the church capable of raising $4 million? We asked that outright. Only 8% said yes, 78% said no. Outright. 14% were uncertain, but they said, well, yeah, if you find some folks who can give you a couple million. So I really take that and put that in the no category. So that was another message to us. By the way, I had no problems getting people to express themselves, either in the interviews or in the surveys. But it was all well done and in good taste. So then one of the things that we did was we asked them to evaluate. We asked them to evaluate first the importance of these items and then the performance. So how important are these things to you and how are we performing? One of the things we're looking for are gaps. And we're looking for gaps of 1.0 or better. And so if we have a gap of 1.0 or better, we're saying that's something that you might want to pursue and zero in on a little bit more. Okay? Below 1.0, we're less concerned. So leadership of the parish, that was the highest rated item in terms of importance, and that was the highest rated item in terms of performance. And it's a gap, it's a minus gap of 0.58, but that wouldn't be a concern to us. Meeting spiritual needs of the parishioners, that's a gap. It's not 1.0, but it's starting to get there. It's starting to get close. So I would even suggest that maybe we'll look into that a little bit more, and how can we better meet the spiritual needs of the parish. But it's still not a major concern. Quality youth religious education, 4.3, 3.5. Quality of children's religious education, one's youth, one's children's, 4.22, 3.45. We're okay there. But here's one, general communication to parishioners. That's important, and remember, 4.0 is above average importance. So that's above average to most important. And people are saying we're underperforming there, and the gap is 1.04. So that's an area that I think the church needs to do a better job of working on communicating with parishioners. Involvement of the parishioners, it's not 1.0, but it's approaching that. So that's another area that I would kind of zero in on and take a look a little bit more deeply. How can we engage people a little bit better? Outreach to the community, that was fine. A gap of 0.62. Stewardship of financial resources. If there's anything that gets you in trouble and gets people mad, it's this one. If you've got a gap of 1.0 or better here, you've got some serious issues. But that was fine. Quality of appropriate mix of youth activities, no problems. Quality of adult formation education, really no problems. So then we asked about the facilities and the music and some other areas. Quality of music, or the existing facilities, that was great. Quality of the music surprised me because with the comments that we got, so many comments on music, you'd think you'd have a much bigger gap, and the gap wasn't substantial, okay? Meeting social recreational needs of parishioners, actually you're overperforming there. And I understand that Oktoberfest was really the highlight. How many of you were involved in Oktoberfest? Good. And I was getting from Matt your recipe for bratwurst, and I had to certify it. That's a good recipe. And then quality appropriate mix of senior activities. You're almost overperforming there. You're underperforming by a slight, but that wasn't an issue at all. So before we get into the comments, how would I evaluate this? How would I look at these? Well, one of the things I see from these things, you've got a few areas. You've got a few areas that you want to take a look at. Meeting the spiritual needs of parishioners. Yeah, it's not 1.0, but it's starting to move up that way. And this is a real. Would you agree? This is a real important element of this. So that's something that you might want to spend a little bit more time looking into. This one really here is important too. General communication to parishioners. So that's an area that you have to look into. I think thirdly, involvement of parishioners. You can never have enough involvement anyway, so I would begin to focus in on this a little bit. Everything else seems pretty good. Although I got such strong commentary, even though it doesn't appear to be a problem, I got such strong commentary on that I would look at that as well. Okay? Now let me go into some of the comments, because we also asked some open-ended comments, and you're going to see some repetition here. And the comments usually add meat to the bones. So let me walk you through some of the comments. First, we asked about major strengths. You can see 61 people said that or something like that. Spirit of community, welcoming, family-like. Parishioners are wonderful, outgoing, made us feel home, people-friendly, greeters, make you feel welcome. Now, what we tried to do is find some representative comments. We didn't put all the comments in here, but we wanted to give you an idea of what people were saying. Pastoral leadership, energetic, enthusiastic pastor, fired up about his faith, pastors involved and knowledgeable of Scripture. So 51 people said that as a strength, said that or something like that. Youth programs, connection to DePaul, people see that as a real ministry. Youth programs growing greatly, nice improvement in youth activities. Relationships with college students, much improved. Was it more of a dormant ministry in the past, or?
Well, this is the first time we've had focus group here.
Okay.
They're doing great work over there.
Okay.
Best ever doing.
All right.
It's youth on youth.
Yeah, good. All right, great. Spiritual opportunities, homilies, mass, 17 people said that or something like it. Outreach to the community, ministry, 9 people said that or something like that. And then finally, opportunities for involvement and communication, 7 people said that or something like that. Communication was interesting because a few people thought it was strong, but a lot of other people didn't think it was as strong. Major weaknesses. right up front. Music selection, people not participating. Music's not adding to the mass in a positive way, hard to sing. Music quality is inconsistent and isn't well supported or valued. Communicate with parishioners on changing music. You know, we had, oh, thank you very much. I was thinking, boy, I sure wish I had a glass of water. One of the things that's important here, and I have to communicate to you, that as many negative comments we had about music, we had positive comments about the music. So there.
Yes.
Huh?
Age. Age.
You know, I guess to some extent, but not as much as you'd think. I mean, it's on both sides of the fence, positive, negative. Mass schedule, lack of a full-time priest. Well, that's true. But that's happening all over, not just Indiana, but Kentucky as well. There just aren't enough priests, and increasingly, priests are serving 2 parishes and 3 parishes in some cases. Lack of volunteerism and involvement. 21 people said that or something like that. Other weaknesses, lack of communication. Okay, so we saw it as a strength, but here we see it as a weakness. And the strength had 7. This has got 19 people said that or something like it. Help us understand what and that should read why. Help us understand what and why we need this project. Address from the pulpit the needs, the vision. Bring us in on it. And I've already discussed some of that with Father. Work to restore unity. Heal some divides that exist. Polarization is a problem. Dialogue's the cure. Must work and pray together. Former pastor left some bad feelings. I don't know anything about that, but need to heal divides between Vatican II and pre-Vatican II views. Need more space. Facility limits us. Okay, 10 people said that or something like it. Parking is crowded, seating is limited, not enough communal meeting spaces, small classrooms. So that's essentially what people said are the weaknesses. Then we asked, all right, give us your opinion of the priorities. If you could sit down with Father and say, this, in my opinion, should be the priorities over the next 3 to 5 years. Address space issues, facility limitations. 29 people said that or something like it. So what are they talking about? Well, they need a bigger structure to address current and future needs, need more seating capacity due to mass overcrowding. Secondly, renewed focus on Catholic education ideology. 28 people said that or something like it. Teach children and youth the roots of our faith so they can stay the course. I had a lot of comments from parents who were concerned about the formation of their kids. They wanted to make sure it was there. And I think, and that's a good sign. You know, parents are thinking about that. Address gap between traditionalists and more liberal views. Offer more mass times. I thought this was possibly a good suggestion. Maybe a retired priest to offer some masses.
Right.
I'm sorry?
We tried that.
Okay, well that's a bad idea.
We talked about it.
We talked about
You
it.
talked about it? You didn't try it?
Well, Father didn't want to try it, really.
Okay, well anyway, I put it out there.
That's good.
So, hire a part-time priest to help in our parish, more mass availability. Father does a great job pastoring 2 parishes, but it's a lot of work. And I can testify to that. Improved efforts in evangelism and outreach. 21 people said that or something like it. Involve more students from DePaul. And you know, they bring a lot of energy to the table. Focus should be on evangelization. And then how do we attract new members and regain those who left? And then finally, heal divisions and build unity in our parish. You could see some of these themes emerging in lots of different ways and lots of different questions. People see change happening but don't know why. Keep us better informed. We need a better understanding of the need for this campaign and mending past hurts. The former pastor, you know, again, and I don't know anything about that, but that's what people told me. So we asked, besides the pastor, who are the most influential people in the parish? And we wanted to get some sense of who are the people that others look to for leadership, for counsel, and so here are some of the names. Some of you may see your names on here, but this is what people were telling us, okay? Then we asked them, highest gift over several years. So this is what people said, the people who told us. I didn't put none of your business down here, but some people told us that too.
The gifts are on the right.
I'm sorry, yeah, well there's gifts, and here are some gifts. And the low end range of those gifts was $230,500, and the high end range was about $378,500. Okay? Now those were just from the interviews. Okay? Here's amounts mentioned. So if you take a look at, these were mentioned in the study, and we controlled for some people who did the interviews and also filled the survey out. And what we get is a low range of $647,000 and a high range of $795,000. Now, I'll tell you first that when people give you information in a survey, they're usually pretty conservative. There's very little information out there. So I thought that was a good sign. But that's not an indication that you can raise $4 million. And it's going to be a lot less than that. So let's take a look at a summary of the key strengths, key challenges, key priorities, and our recommendations for next steps. Key strengths, spirit of the community and family. Would you agree with that? No? Yes? No?
Yes.
We have good community. We have a good community here. We've always had a good community.
Pastoral leadership, renewed focus on youth, and opportunities for spiritual growth. So those were seen as strengths. Weaknesses, music is hard to follow, people are not participating. Okay? Mass schedule is inconvenient, need more times, need help from a part-time priest. Lack of volunteerism and parishioner involvement, and improved communications. Okay? So, first of all, let me just ask you, do you pretty much agree with those strengths? And how about the weaknesses? Are they pretty dead on? All right, so what are the priorities? Address space issues and facility needs. That was important. Renew focus on Catholic teachings and ideology. Improve mass availability. Explore the idea of a part-time priest to help father, maybe a retired priest. So that's out there. And continue to improve outreach and evangelism efforts. So we get some sense. Now, this one is going to be controlled in part also by the Archdiocese. So some of this stuff is out of Father's control. Okay? So what are our based on all that, what are our recommendations, next steps? I really think it's important, as far as the communication process, is to get that information out there. Not to hide this or hold it back, but to let people know, because everybody knows that a survey's been going on as well as a study. So I think you've got to put a summary. You don't want to put all this stuff in there, but we'll help you develop a summary report of findings and put it in the church bulletin and on the church website. That's really important, yes?
If you just do a summary, I'm afraid an awful lot of is lost.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you do
yeah,
more extensive rather
yeah.
than less.
You can put more, I think, on your website. I don't think you're going to fit all this on your bulletin. It's just not going to happen. So we'll help you summarize it for the bulletin, but I think you can put as much as you want on the website. As a matter of fact, you can put a link to the study on the website. That would be fine. I mentioned earlier a few gaps. I think we've got to take a look at some of those gaps, and we've got to also take a look at gaps in information and begin to address some of those from the pulpit, address the reasons for the campaign, the needs, and the strategic vision. I think that's really important. Yeah.
Father's already suggested, I heard, that the parish council and other councils need to make their minutes available.
Good,
And,
good, good.
I assume in the bulletin.
Good, good. That's good. And the more of that stuff you can do, the better. And I'll tell you why in a minute. There's lots of reasons why, but I think it's important for you to announce a decision, if you're going to move forward, to announce a decision to the parish. I think the parish needs to know about it. I think they need to know why, because those 2 and 3 are related. And then I think you've got to decide, okay, if we're going to move forward, when's going to be our commitment? I don't think you're going to have a commitment before probably late April, early May. I think also you're going to have to recruit some leaders. And what I recommend is co-chairs and some key committee chairs and campaign coordinators. I'll explain that in a minute. You're also going to have to recruit some additional committee members, and then you're going to have to organize and train committees and begin to meet with committees to implement the plan. What we do is we facilitate those meetings and we conduct the training sessions. I think also you're going to have to develop some collaterals and a video with the communications committee. And then also, I think you're going to have some advanced commitment work, and I'll explain each of those campaign committees in a minute. There are some informational meetings that are really important to this campaign because, and it's not just giving people information, but it's getting information out there and then allowing people to respond to that information by asking questions. And one of the things that we recommend at those information meetings is that you even plant a couple of questions so it makes it more comfortable for people to ask the questions. So if one or two people start asking questions, then more people will raise their hands. And we want people to be able to ask questions. Because if you don't allow them to ask questions, the issues are going to come up later on in some way. I think also there are some selected major gift solicitations, but most of the people are going to be solicited in a different way. Create a campaign structure, and one of the things I said is that your basic needs are closer to $1 million, and you can do a visionary needs of 500 because they estimated that was it somewhere in the vicinity of 1.5 million? Okay, so what I would do is position it basic needs $1 million, visionary needs 500,000, and here's what happens with that. If you say, okay, let's just, because it's going to cost us 1.5 million, we can do a campaign that will raise 1.5 million. Well, what happens if you raise 1.2 million? Well, that becomes a campaign failure, okay? And what we're saying is, you're going to be a lot more successful if you do it this way. You can go over this goal, but if you wind up only raising 1.1 or 1.2 million, it's still been a very successful campaign. You just didn't hit the stretch goal, the visionary needs goal. Okay, so we'll put them both out there, but that's what we would recommend. And then I think you've got to decide on some of the details of the project. And I think your committee's working on it, aren't they? Well, you've been working on it to some extent?
Well, we've got pieces of it, put that way.
Okay. Well, I think you know, you're going to have to do some discussing about the expansion, where it's going to be, what it's going to look like. You don't have to get architectural support yet, but you need to be thinking that way. That would be our recommendation. And then develop a comprehensive manual. We do that for you once we know when your commitment weekend is. We work backwards from that date and begin to put together a manual that has a campaign overview, a schedule, job descriptions, sample communications materials, production schedule. It's everything in there from soup to nuts. So here's how we organize campaigns, and there are 4 principles that we use. Number 1, and most important, is broad information sharing. You've got to make sure that people not only have the information, effective communication is two-way, okay? It's speaking, but it's also listening. Someone said that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we listen twice as much as we talk. But essentially, we've got to listen as well as talk. So broad information sharing is important. What we don't want people to think there are a few people in the back room making all these decisions. This is a parish effort, and so it's important to focus on having really clear information, and we want to eliminate any ambiguity. What happens is that ambiguity comes up in questions, and you can deal with it. But if you don't know what the questions are, you're not going to be able to deal with it. So broad information sharing is a real important part of the process. Number 2, involvement. In most campaigns, you have a few people doing lots of things. In our model, we have a lot of people doing a few things. People say, oh, you don't know our parish, you're not going to be able to get that done. We have not failed to have that happen in any parish that we've done a campaign in, simply because what we're asking people to do is very clear. It's a small amount rather than a large amount. We only have a couple of meetings for each committee, and each meeting is an hour or less. And I set the agendas for those meetings, and I supervise those meetings to make sure that we get through them. Okay? So people have responded very well to that. Involvement's really important because when you have more people involved, and we have 6 operational committees, but you get stronger commitment from people if they're involved, and what that does is that increases engagement and it increases giving typically. And again, as I said, there's no more than 2 meetings for each committee. Momentum, that's really important, and we build that in a couple of different ways. I think I've told some of you before, in a prior life I played basketball in college, and our team was pretty good. We were ranked in the top 20. No reflection on my ability. My coach told me, he said, Lenny, we made a decision today in Valley. I said, what's that, coach? He said, we decided we're going to recruit at your level and above. So the good news was I was in, but the bad news was I spent a lot of time on the bench. But I was able to watch my coaches and learn from my coaches how they built momentum and how they used momentum during the course of games. And when I first graduated from college, I was a high school basketball coach, and I did some of the same things to build and use momentum during the course of games. And then when I left high school and went into higher education, again, I was vice president for institutional advancement at Bellarmine. Part of that was fundraising, part of that was admissions, but again, we use momentum to bring us success. And so we use momentum, and we do it in a couple of different ways. The capstone phase is about the last 6 weeks of the campaign, where there's lots of meetings, lots of information, lots of activities going on. So people are asking questions, getting them answered, and that's part of the way we build momentum. But also, we have what's called an advanced commitment phase. Are any of you familiar with United Way fundraising? Well, they do the Pace Setter campaign, essentially, up front, and they get a small number of typically corporations or organizations to participate in that to begin to build momentum. That's the same thing we do. We call it advanced commitment because one of the things we're going to ask people to do is make their commitments 3 or 4 weeks in advance of the rest of the parish. And essentially, we announce the number that's raised from a small amount of people, and as a result of that, that typically creates a level of excitement. We had a campaign where we were trying to raise $2 million at Prince of Peace Parish. Any of you familiar with Prince of Peace in Madison, Indiana? It's in Madison, Indiana. Anyway, the most this church had ever raised was $900,000, and it was a failed campaign because they tried to raise a little over $1 million. So in the advanced commitment phase, we actually raised $1.9 million. They wound up raising about $2.3 million in that campaign. But the advanced commitment phase was a real important part of that and created a lot of energy and a lot of excitement. So that's essentially how we, again, build momentum. And then finally, prayer. And I don't make any bones about it. Campaigns are about capacity and they're about will. Does the parish have the capacity to raise $1 million? Yes. We pretty much determined that. But the second part of that is will. And I can't affect the will, but the Holy Spirit can. And so we start every meeting with prayer. And if I remember, we close every meeting with prayer. And that doesn't mean the Father has to be there to pray. We're going to ask some of you all to pray at those meetings. But secondly, we have a 24-hour prayer chain towards the end of the campaign, where people sign up for 15-minute slots to pray around the clock for the success of the parish. And effectively, some people might resist that, but we've never had any problem getting that whole prayer chain filled up, and that tends to create a bit of excitement. And people are asked to thoughtfully and prayerfully consider what they might do. Now, the point is that if people are actually sitting down and talking about this and then praying about leadership and direction, I think that the gifts will increase. That's just our experience. That's what we've had. But those are the 4 principles: broad information sharing, involvement, momentum, and prayer. Okay? And this is a breakdown of what the committees look like. Yes, ma'am?
One of the things that we had happen last time when we did this thing First of all, it seems to me we have to know what we're going to be doing. And I think, I went out and told people, according to what our schedule was supposed to be, what it was going to look like. And it didn't turn out to be that at all in the long run. I guess we didn't get the money or what, but I didn't hear anything about that. We didn't tell everybody about that. I was a little disappointed in the long run because we didn't make big enough facility, and now here we are again trying to do this. And it seems to me we've got to know what we're going to put out there, saying this is what we're going to do, and stick with that somehow or another, so people will know exactly what we're supposed to be doing with this money.
I agree with you.
So that's just my opinion, but that's how I feel about what happened last time.
I agree.
What happened was we was going to raise around 700,000, 800,000, somewhere in there. And the architect did the drawings, and he changed his operation after us. But anyway, the bids came in at $1.4 million. So we had to pay him again to redesign. He gave us a little handprint, a nice little print to begin with, before he made contract drawings, but to show folks and kind of get an idea. But anyway, we had 700,000, and this building was designed around the 700,000.
Well, I will tell you this. I mean, my advice is, first of all, that you not consider going into debt. I don't think the Archdiocese will allow you to do that. That's why it's going to be important for the committees to do some work.
Well, we had to come up with half the money. We had the pledge, though. We had the $700,000 pledge, but we had half the money.
Well, that's still the rule. Whatever you're going to build, you've got to have 100% of it pledged, and you have to have 50% of it in hand. That's right. But I'll tell you, if the project is, let's say this project is $1.5 million, and we don't raise $1.5 million, we raise $1 million or 900,000. Then first of all, we won't be able to move forward until we adjust the plans to 900,000. That's first, and secondly, until we have half of it, all of it pledged and half of it in hand. So it's pretty much the same way. And really, quite frankly, from the Archdiocese standpoint, and I don't represent the Archdiocese, but that makes sense because technically the Archdiocese owns all of the properties, and so they're ultimately responsible for it, which is why they require you to do a feasibility study up front to begin with. Okay,
Well,
but good point.
What do you think about if we don't get the money right away, wait and try to get it later rather than adjust everything out and people will be disappointed or what?
I can't tell you that. That has to be a parish
And
decision.
it does have to be a lot of communication involved with this. I don't think it was really clear what did happen last time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think people need to know, but I think also I can't make a recommendation in an area because, well, number one, we haven't had to deal with that. We have not had a Catholic parish fail to achieve its goal. Now, we've had a couple of parishes get mad at us when we did the feasibility study, and we told them, I remember one parish, we told them you could raise about 2.1 million, and it was a large parish, but there just wasn't the energy behind this thing. It's, oh no, we can do so much more. You know how much they raised? 2.1 million. So, and then they were mad. Well, we didn't have a good enough campaign. You know, what are you going to do? But essentially, actually, and they've now raised about 2.4 million. So effectively, but they wanted to raise 3.5, 4, and it wasn't there. So I think we spend a lot of time doing our due diligence to make sure that you can never really be totally sure, but we have pretty good guesstimates, and we've had good success at doing that. Now, to answer your question, though, people need to know. Okay, and the information needs to be spread broadly. Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about these committees. We have 6 operational committees. The Communications Committee meets a couple of times. Their responsibility is to create the packages of communication. What's involved? Brochure, pledge cards, a video. But we're not going to say just go ahead and do it. We'll give them some prototypes. And oftentimes they use the same language, and that's fine with us. We're no proud of authorship there. But that's a communications committee, and typically you're going to find some people who are involved in that business if you have them in the parish. The invitation committee, That's a group of people, and the Invitation Committee and the Information Fellowship Committee work together. The Invitation Committee is your largest, these two are your largest two committees, Information Fellowship Meeting and Invitation Committee. Information Fellowship Meeting, about 85% of the parish is going to be invited to one of two information sessions, and they'll probably be right in here, okay? And at that session, Father will have about 20 minutes or so where you'll have table hosts leading a conversation. In that conversation, they'll talk a little bit about, hi, I'm Len Moyson, I've been a member of this parish for 14 years. My kids were baptized here, they were confirmed here, they've gone on to Catholic high school. When I was sick and in the hospital, people brought meals over to my house for 2 weeks in a row. Those kinds of stories, and then we go around and introduce each other. They self-introduce each other and talk about their experience here at the parish. Okay, that lasts about 20 minutes, and once that's up, Father welcomes them, thanks them for coming, prays, and then plays a video. The video kind of gives an overview of the campaign, and it doesn't have to be a professionally produced video. We've had some very good videos produced by kids in the parish, so it doesn't have to be sophisticated. Once that's done, Father gets up, shares his vision. Then one of the co-chairs will get up and walk you through the projects, walk you through a packet of information that you'll have, and then ask you to thoughtfully and prayerfully consider what you might do for the campaign. Go home, talk about it, pray about it, and then he'll open it up to questions, or she'll open it up to questions, and then we'll have a question and answer period. So those sessions last, with the conversations and the reception time and everything else, no more than an hour and a half, and typically about an hour, hour and 15 minutes. That's the information meeting. Well, to get people there, they're going to have to be invited. So we have an invitation committee that calls everybody in the parish, or 85% of the parish, that calls them, invites them to one of the information sessions. Okay? Now, actually they do 3 calls. The first call is to invite them and register them, and yes, they're going to get answering machines, and yes, we're going to have to call them back. So there are other ways for them to get people registered. But the second call is a reminder, and that can just be a voicemail, like the dentist office reminds you. We're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow for your appointment. Same thing, we're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow for the Information Fellowship meeting. And the third call is right before commitment weekend, and that too can be a voicemail. Or you can do it through text as well. Simply, please be in prayer for commitment weekend. It's coming up. We're looking forward to seeing you. So that's the third series of the calls. So that's the Invitation Committee. That's the Information Committee. The Advanced Commitment Committee are, as I said, about 15% of the parish. People who have typically shown leadership in some way will be asked to make their commitments 3 or 4 weeks early. And they'll do that at dinners. These will be dinners hosted by, there'll be 2 or 3 or 4 dinners hosted by folks in the parish at their homes. It's not a fancy dinner. Sometimes it's just, we've had everything from Taco Bell to all kinds of things. The focus is not on the dinner as much as it is on people being asked to make their commitments early. Father will be there. We'll show a video. We'll talk about it. One of the co-chairs will talk about it. But that's the advanced commitment. And then there's a Children's Endowment Committee. Listen, the children are the future of the parish. So this is a great time to teach them about stewardship. Typically the kids get involved. We had one parish, St. Michael's Parish in Louisville, where the kids raised $1 million pennies, which wound up being $10,000. Of course, you know where they got those pennies. From their parents. But we had some great examples of benevolence on the part of the children. And so that's what usually the people who work with the children are the ones who organize the committee and make the decision in terms of what they want to do. And we give them some examples, but ultimately they have to decide. And then finally, there's a commitment weekend committee that's responsible for making sure on commitment weekend there are plenty of pledge cards, plenty of pens. There'll be a point where people will be asked to come up, and so they'll serve as ushers to make sure that people aren't bumping into each other and we have smooth traffic flow. They'll also be responsible for the 24-hour prayer chain, okay? And then there are co-chairs and the campaign coordinators. Campaign coordinators, there are 3. And each of those coordinators is responsible for 2 committees, making sure that the committees are on schedule and everything is happening. So they're kind of the engineers of the campaign. And then there are campaign co-chairs who will take care of a small segment of major gifts. So that's the organization, and the steering committee are all of these people, the chairs of all of these committees, okay? That's the steering committee. So that's how it breaks out, and that's how we get involvement. Okay? Go ahead. Yes?
Has Father contacted Archdiocese to see about getting a part-time booth before we proceed with anything?
I don't know the answer to that. Does anybody know the answer to that? But you know, my suggestion, you might want to ask them. I don't know.
Is it decided then that we are doing this? Is that already decided?
Our recommendation is that ultimately, I think Father and some of you are going to have to decide it.
Well, the way that the questionnaire was online, if they answered it online, they could only choose between the $4 million or the $1.5 million, whatever it was. And there was no other choice. So they couldn't say, not at this time, or I'm not really for this.
Well, there was an opportunity to say that in other places.
Yeah, but most people, I noticed on the thing, it said 75% wanted this. But then there was, who was the 25? It's just the people who spoke to you, right?
No? No. It was also people who handled the survey. I'm sorry?
Well, where was it online that they put it?
It was a question. Which do you prefer?
1 or 2.
Yeah.
That was it.
But,
Okay.
see,
Yeah, but you know what? I can't get into other alternatives because that you know, this is what we received, and so this is what we tested for. Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, but we need to be talking about that, exactly what we want to have done, because I know they had the architectural things and they had several. So you're right, we need to be sure to decide what we want to have before we go into all these structures and all this kind of committee stuff and all that. It's going to take a lot of energy to get everybody on board on this thing. It's.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with that. I think it's important for you to know, understand, and have a chance for input. No question about that. I don't disagree with that. But what I had were 2 alternatives, and so we tested for those, and which of those would you prefer? 75% of the people prefer the addition as opposed to the new church.
Can we ask for a vote on a yes or no?
You know, I can't answer that. I don't know how the parish operates. You're going to have to talk to Father about that.
see, that when you made the statement, the money's there, but I thought you were going to say, is the will there?
Yeah, that's
And
right.
that's what I don't really wonder if the will is there. When we done this other project in 96, 98, there was a broad consensus, and anyway, it wasn't a hard sell, but I don't know that consensus is.
Well, the research that we did would beg to differ with you. There seems to be.
There is a pretty good consensus to do something.
Yeah, I would make that based on what people told me.
I will say you folks done a thorough job. You
thanks.
asked the right questions, and what your answers were are correct from what I understand as far as what this parish is about, as far as hospitality, where we're lacking, what we need to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you asked the right questions, and it was thorough. It was a thorough job.
Thanks.
Some of the concern, I think it's come up, yeah, there was no third option, which was maybe do nothing, change nothing. But you're saying even from those 2, all the interviews you did, all the survey respondents you got, you weren't, if there was a big push for option 3, do nothing, you would have heard that, right?
Yeah, there were 1 or 2 people who said something to that effect, but generally that was it. That was all we heard.
I think she was talking about different kinds of programs, different kinds of structures that we would have. Because the architect did give about 3 or 4. different ones and the prices on each one of them. And I don't know why people just settle on those two, the highest and the lowest on those. But that would be, at least I would be interested in seeing exactly what we would be getting.
Yeah.
Because we did have that
Yeah, I mean, now
variance.
that we know, if we say it's 1.5 million that we can do, would we come back with
See what-
pictures of here are our options with that money?
That's-
Is that what the building committee is doing, or is that a separate committee?
Well, we haven't started that piece.
Yeah.
Okay, so does that piece happen before you start
I
asking?
would have to.
Well, actually, no, not necessarily. Typically, you never know exactly what you're going to be able to do until you're basically done with the campaign. But you can get some rough drawings and some ideas of what you want to do. But it should be made clear that, look, this is assuming that we can raise this money. This is what it would look like. And you can do some of that, some line drawings, a few other things. But to have specific architectural plans is really going to be driven by how much money you raise.
Lynn, did you see the drawings we had?
No, I did not see
They were
it.
nice little drawings. There was going to be a church in parking lot. These just recently. Father's friends with the guy, actually, he did the Hoosier Dome.
Okay.
Not the Hoosier Dome, the Lucas Oil.
Uh-huh.
And they was architect there. And anyway, they made some nice drawings. And I'm sure we can get a decent drawing that people can understand. I mean, if it was laid out, the church was laid out, there was an apartment in the church, and, so we would take the rectory down. And, no, there was...
Well, there are lots of communication things that need to happen. And we know that happens in every parish and every campaign. And so one of the things that we're saying is that, look, we think you can raise $1 million and possibly $1.5 million. Ultimately, though, whether or not you're going to do it really depends on you, Father, the Archdiocese, all of that stuff. So
I was going to ask you a question before you took that down. When you had the donations, the dollar amount, on this side there was like 50,000 to 100,000, and then over here was the other donations also. Was those just, have you actually got?
yeah, those were indications from the interviews.
From the people you talked to?
Yeah, the interviews, and essentially they were just in a descending order. We put them and then we totaled them down the bottom, and we had a range, and so we gave you the low range. We added them up, and then we added them up with the high range, and that's.
Did you actually get an offer of 50 to 100,000
Yeah.
donation?
Don't forget, it's five years.
It's a 5
It's
year.
5 years.
Five-year
Oh, no, I
commitment.
know it's 5 years.
5 years.
That's great, because when we did this last project, the highest donation we had was 15,000.
Yeah, we had all of those pledges that you saw on there
Yeah.
were from conversations that we had.
Okay, I wondered.
I want to say one other thing,
Yes, ma'am.
because we went out and tried to ask for money, and we were given a price that we were supposed to ask for. I
Yeah.
hope you don't do that.
We don't do that.
Oh, good.
As a matter of fact, the
I thought it
vast
was all-
majority of the people in the parish are going to be asked to thoughtfully and prayerfully consider what you might do. They're going to make their pledge on a pledge card, they're going to put it inside an envelope, and they're going to walk it down on commitment weekend.
Okay.
Now, there might be some asks, but not very many. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think that's all, your giving is between you and God, is not, and essentially, that's kind of the approach we take. That's why we talk about the importance of prayer and the importance of the moving of the Holy Spirit.
But there was a plus side to that too, because it's just like taking collections on Sunday. Some people think the church can run on $2 a week. I'm serious.
No,
You have to know what kind of money you're looking for.
Yeah. And they'll have a good understanding of that. We'll make that clear. Okay, other questions? Or?
One thing I see, I think we're kind of landlocked here. We have a hard time with parking spaces, we have people driving around, so if we expand, I don't know if it's going to go up. I know you have, I looked at some of these plans before, and I think for 55 people that send in North Texas, that's a lot of money. Just kidding.
I'm sorry, for 55 people,
That have to send the North X on Sunday morning.
And not always, they don't always have to sit there. You know, like during the summer and during,
It's not right.
Yeah, that's not, you hardly have anyone out there.
Well, I think all of those are legitimate questions that unfortunately, I can't answer.
Yeah.
What we basically did is take your plans, put them out there, and then test them to see how people responded. There may be some questions, but for the most part, I think you've got pretty good support for this campaign. I've seen a lot worse, believe me. So I think you're in a strong position.
And your overall recommendation, we can hit $1 million, maybe 1.5.
Yeah, I mean, $1 million is not a walk in the park. It's going to take folks who thoughtfully and prayerfully consider what they might do. But you know, it just really depends on really the spirit of the campaign, the spirit of the parish. We've had kids. We had one kid who was saving up for a bike, and he had $650, and he prayed about it and said he gave that money to a campaign. We had another kid who kept a stuffing papers on weekends job, and he was 16. He wanted to quit it. He kept it for 2 more years and gave the money. He got $20 a week and gave the money, $2,000 to the parish. So you get all kinds of incredible stories, but it depends on kind of will of the people and the spirit of the parish. So yeah, I think you've got the capacity to do that, and hopefully the will. And the will may not be there with everybody now, but you've got to trust that as this thing unfolds, if we do it correctly, that more people will join in. But already you've got pretty good support from what I've seen. Yeah.
Lynn, we had a family we called on, man and woman. He was non-Catholic, young couple. And anyway, we were talking, and he goes in the bedroom and comes out, and I forget what he had, $400, $500, $600. But anyway, his wife had no idea it was his mad money. And he turned that over to us. I mean, the Holy Ghost had a hold of him. Big time. Like I said, his wife had no idea he had that kind of money.
That's great. Well, I've sat there sometimes with, and pastors have told me they've gone in to see somebody, and this was a parish at St. Joseph's Proto-Cathedral, where one of the gentlemen gave a major gift of about almost $900,000, gave some stock. And he went in and asked one of his peers, who owned a pretty good-sized distributorship, and the guy got really mad. And the guy pulled him aside and he said, look, I'm not asking you to do anything that I'm not doing. He said, what are you doing? And he told him, he said, all right. So you get lots of interesting reactions. I heard of one where they went in to talk to the husband, and he gave him a commitment amount, and the pastor said thanks, and the wife looked at him and said, that's not enough. So you get all kinds. But you'll have some really good successes, then you'll have some disappointments. That happens in most campaigns. So listen, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed getting to know the people in the parish. You've got a great parish and great people. You've got diverse opinions. You've got some folks who would just as soon be the Pope and make all the decisions. I'm not going to say who those are, but it was a nice group of people, and I've enjoyed it so far. So if you move forward and decide to move forward, we'll love having the opportunity to work with you.
Just for a point of information, we had about 235 donors last time.
Okay, that's good. That's great.
235.
Well, that's great.
A lot of them's gone. I mean, through attrition, not just leaving, but finding them, they're not here for 25 years.
Well, there's also, one of the things Father told me is, and of course we're going to have to work on this, but some of the kids coming here, their parents can help too. So.
Paul.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They haven't.
We had that happen.
Yeah.
Father Mike, who was pastor at that time, it was easier to get addresses and everything back then. Not everything wasn't so much so being prayed. But anyway, he would send a letter to each family and tell them that the parents that the children were welcome, that go to be called this and that. And he hit on a guy that was the vice president at Lowe's.
Yeah.
And we burnt the mortgage early.
Yeah, that's good.
He gave us about $150,000.
Well, could you see the diversity of opinions here? And there's lots of diverse opinions. One of the things that I wish you could do is maybe have Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump come and learn from you. Because you can have diverse opinions and still care for each other.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, in this campaign, I mean, the last one, we went out and visited the people. Will we be doing that
No.
again?
No.
That, I didn't think so, I was wondering.
Yeah, no,
That was very informative, but a lot of people felt that you only come for money, you don't come to serve me.
Yeah.
And that was 2 or 3 times I heard that.
yeah, we've
And
got
so
a,
that's another aspect.
yeah, we've got a different model.
Okay, that's good.
Well, thanks for your time.
Well, thanks for
Appreciate it.
having me. Thanks. And I'm sorry I missed Oktoberfest.
That's a good time.
That's what I heard.
Is that blocked?